Pepe needs to die. I hate him so freaking much. Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about Bleach and its anime return, and I've seen a lot of people talking about this. There were some more prominent YouTubers that specifically cover Bleach talking about this, and I wanted to talk about how do they fix the final arc. Now, let me just preface this by saying I don't think that they're going to change anything integral. They're not going to change the arrow. I don't think that they're going to change how Yuha dies. I think it'll all still kind of flow in that kind of way. However, I think that there's a lot that they could do to add to the story and kind of stretch things out just a bit, because we know Kubo had a lot planned for this arc, but then some stuff happened, and by the end, he just kind of had to wrap it up. And you can tell this by, I mean, honestly, you could tell it ever since, like, the Sternritters and Yuha show up at the Royal Palace. But it's really prevalent in the last, like, 5 chapters, because it's just like go, 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 go. So let's talk about how they can help make the anime feel more comfortable and fix some of the more garbled parts of the manga story. Now, I'm not going to go back and rewrite everything, because I think a lot of the final arc is super, super good. I love all the characters, well, almost all the characters, and I generally love where Kubo goes with the overarching story. I honestly think that there's just little things here and there that they could do to help flesh out the story and make it a more complete package. Now, I might jump around here a little bit because I'm not going to go sequential as far as like, oh, this happens and then this happens or this happens. But I do want to kind of just think about where I'm going with this, because I'm kind of both going in this with a plan, but also with a little bit off the cuff, like I'm just talking. But one thing I want to just talk about right now is the very ending, and it's like I'm talking about the very ending, and I don't think that Kubo, I mean, maybe he had more planned, but I think the manga does not do most of the characters justice as far as showing them after the war ends. Now, let me just pause for a second and say that I know that there's the light novels, Can't For Your Own World. I love it. I played through the story of it or whatever through Bleach Brave Souls, and now I'm kind of making my way slowly through the actual novel. But I think as far as the core story goes, they really could have done a lot to just like, hey, here's a shot of Yoruichi and Urahara back at the shop. They survived. They're good to go. And that's literally all you really need to do, is just show these characters. Like, obviously, we see Shunsui and Nanao because they're at Rukia's like coronation for her getting promoted to captain of Squad 13. But like, Yoruichi, Grimjow, Urahara, and Neliel just like disappear. They completely fly off the panel. They are off the radar. They were nowhere to be seen for the entirety of the last leg of the story. And it's just like, they don't need to do anything specific. Like, I don't see I never saw Urahara coming back after his fight with Askin. But like, why wouldn't they just show him in like the epilogue? Just show him hanging out at the shop with like Jinta and Tessai and Ururu, and it's just show them doing something. Show that they are alive. As long as we're talking about characters that were slightly underused, I mean, Urahara at least had his like big battle with Askin, although it could have gone a little longer. But at least he had a full, complete battle. But as long as we're talking about characters that like kind of just don't do anything, let's talk about Rangiku. Let's talk about Ishin and Ryuken, because they don't do anything. They like come. Kubo had them show up at the Varvelt. They were not even in the Soul Society at this point, so they weren't even like, oh, they're on the ground or whatever, waiting for everybody to come back down. They like were on the Varvelt, because that's where Uryu sees Ryuken and Ishin up there, and they give him the arrow. So like, have them do something, whether it's a different enemy that didn't get turned into a skeleton or whatever. Just have them show up and help out in some way. Don't just say like, hey, here's the arrowhead, peace out, we're not gonna help with anything. Like, do something. Not only that, but there's a ton of characters that just get swatted away on their way up to the Soul King's palace. Like all of the Visors, basically. Most of the people that were basically heading towards the Soul King's palace, with the exception of Shunsui and Nanao, who go off and face Lille Barrow. Obviously, Kisuke and Yoruichi end up fighting Askin. And you have like Byakuya and Toshiro and Kenpachi fighting Gerard. So, but everybody else just kind of disappears. They either get picked off by Lille Barrow, or they like just kind of get swatted away by Gerard, and then they don't do anything. What is the point of having them there if they're not going to do anything? And now I don't want to steal any ideas from anybody else that I've watched, but I do have a general appreciation for a video that Tekken 101 made, in which he said it was like him fixing the final leg of the arc, in which he has a whole thing where Yuha uses Yama's Bankai finally, because he has the medallion with Yamamoto's Bankai. And then in that, he brings back zombies for everybody to fight. I don't even think it needs to go that far, although that would be very cool. But I don't think it even needs to go that far in order to have all of these characters come back and have a meaningful moment. Honestly, the only thing you really need to do is, once Yuha heads to the Soul Society, stretch out the Aizen fight with him. Do something. I think Tekken mentions have like Izuru show up, and I think that would be really cool. But have that fight in general be stretched out to some degree, and then have all of the remaining characters that are left, like, are actually maybe able to do something, show up at the Soul King Palace to be like, hey, Ichigo, we're headed out there. And honestly, you could even have Ichigo and Renji still head out on their own, but then have everybody behind them, have them show up after them, and do something. It needs to be the kind of thing where they all need to show up. If you're going to make Yuha Bak a godlike enemy, a villain that is nobody else could be, everybody's just crap here for him, you need to have everybody going after him. And honestly, how Kubo had all of the captain class Soul Reapers fighting against Aizen and fake Karakura Town, that's what you need to do with Yuha. You need to have them all rushing at Yuha, and even if it's not like, oh, like Aizen basically dominated all of the characters at once, but even if it's like, okay, let's say Toshiro rushes at him and gets knocked down, and he's down for a second, and then Byakuya comes after him, you could still have Toshiro come back and like whatever, but just have him deflecting all of these people, all of these attacks, and doing whatever. Have the Visored show up and do something, and maybe at some point they all get knocked down, and you finally have this moment where Uryu shoots the arrow and and Ichigo finally slashes him in half. But you need to do something to build up to that. It can't just happen. And as long as I'm talking about the arrow, oh my god, Kubo and whoever's doing the anime need to stretch out how much the arrow is important to the overarching story, because we get little bits here and there. Oh, Ryukin took the like silver out of his wife, and then like, oh, whatever, it shows up, whatever. But just like Ryukin and Ishin just showing up and leaving, that needs to change. It cannot be exclusively the Deus Ex Machina that it is. It needs to have, it can still be there. It can still be some kind of like, oh, it's their last thing to bring down Yuha and give Ichigo a chance, but make it more important. Have it be something that has been brought up before, and then people forget about until it shows back up again. A thought I had was, maybe you have a moment where you actually see Ryukin talking to Uryu and telling him about this arrow and whatever, and then they kind of come up with a plan in which like Ichigo knows about the arrow, and maybe a handful of other people know about the arrow, and that's what they're doing. They're biding their time to wait for a moment that they can get the arrow into Yuha. It can't just be something that happens. It can't just be that, because then it's like there's nothing there. It could have been anything at that point that got him. It could have been whatever, Ichigo injecting Yuha with hollow powers or something like that. It has to have substance. So in my head, the best case scenario is have everybody working towards an actual goal that is not just defeating Yuha. Have it be the kind of thing where it's like they're all fighting him, and then give some time for the reader to, or in this case, I guess, viewer, to forget about the arrow. Have it be a big shocking moment when, oh, By the way, Uryu's been kind of in the background, and maybe he fought a little bit ahead of time, but like he's been kind of biding his time to hit Yuha, and you show how much effort has been put into getting that arrow into Yuha. Now, as long as I'm talking about the arrow in itself, I want to bring up the point that it comes from still silver that causes like a blood clot in people's hearts when they're hit by Ashwaulan. Which brings me to my next point. Ashwaulan needs to get streamlined way over the top here, right? It needs to get specified in what it actually does. They could even throw in a line that like, oh, it depends, the effects of Ashwaulan depend on how much Yuha is pulling from you, or how he does it, or whatever. They can still have these moments where it's like, oh, this person turned into a skeleton, but this person didn't. Give a reason why that happened. Don't just have it be, oh, whatever. Clearly, Kubo had an idea, but he just didn't know what he wanted the effects of said idea to be. For all of them, it takes their powers, but it depends on what kind of powers we're talking about. In one case, they stated that it takes their Quincy powers as a whole. In another case, you see Basby still using his like burner fingers, but then it's like, oh well, it just took my like the Volstandig, the wings and Halo and everything. And then on top of that, what defines being hit by the Ashwaulan? Do you have to be in the beam of light? Or is it the kind of thing that takes away that, like, holy form either way, but if you're out of the light, then you're saved and you don't get the blood clot? Is the blood clot avoidable? Is it the kind of thing where it's like, it'll naturally happen, but if you like go into surgery or something like that after Ashwaulan happens, can you save yourself? Why are all these Quincy's that like survived the story still alive if they've lost their powers due to Ashwaulan? Fix that. Make it just more specific. Tell us why these things are happening and how they are happening. Tell us how these characters are alive then, especially since Basby was hit by the beam of light, didn't get turned into a skeleton, and still had his powers, and whatever. He didn't have his holy form, sure, but like, okay. And not only that, you have situations where like Gerard Valkyrie turns into a skeleton along with Robert Acutron, but then everybody else doesn't. I mean, you still had Basby and what's his face, Nanana, I think, get hit with it, and the freaking Hoshwal gets hit with it too. But like none of them turn into skeletons, and Hoshwal turns into a skeleton at the same time as Gerard. So like, where is the consistency there? Which is why I think that if they just say, oh, depending on what Yuha wants from you. Maybe he's pulling a specific power. Maybe he's pulling all of your power. If he's like really digging in to grab you, then he takes everything and you turn into a skeleton. If he isn't and he's just like, yo, give me some of that, then it just leaves you with the clot. I don't know. We need answers to this. That's what I want. Now, we've talked about characters that could use more love. We've talked about techniques and plot points that maybe could use a little more fleshing out and describing. Now let's talk about battles and characters in general that, like, I think could have maybe been reconfigured as far as their pacing goes. Now, one of the biggest battles that I think everybody agrees could have had some better pacing is the Squad Zero fight. Now, honestly, there's some good stuff in there, but I think a lot of people were disappointed because they were so easily taken down. And honestly, I think if you just show a little bit more, like their victory over the Schutzstaffel at first is kind of an odd one because it's like, okay, they beat them, but the Schutzstaffel really weren't using much of their powers at all. So it was a really weird situation, and then the Schutzstaffel get like resurrected by Yuha using the initial Ashwaulan, and then they get like just torn apart. And it's just a weird situation. They're supposed to be the most powerful Soul Reapers overall, and I guess that's the question, right? Are they the most powerful? Are they most influential? Most important due to their creations? Maybe they're not. I mean, that's the thing. They say that all 5 of them, I think it's 5, are so powerful that they're more powerful than the entire court guard squad together. But then they're never shown to be that powerful. And I think honestly, at the very least, if we saw their releases and it was like, oh, here's why they're so powerful, and here's why Yuha is so scary because he could defeat them, that would go a long way. A battle, on the other hand, that I think could go much shorter is get rid of Pepe. I hate Pepe. Pepe needs to die. I hate him so freaking much. The weird part about Pepe is that it's like Kubo wanted to have 3 different zombie fights going on at the same time. And while it made sense for Mayuri to go versus Giselle, and that was a really interesting battle, which honestly I think that could get stretched out a little bit. I liked seeing what was going on with that. Pepe was just so unnecessary. He's not a likable character. It's not like anybody was saying, oh, I want more Pepe. I want to see what this guy can do. It was just like this weird, like, moment in which, like, Kubo just wanted to do some weird, creepy shit, and then just, like, whatever. And this was in the middle of the Zero Division fight. This was in the middle. Like, they started facing off against the Schutzstaffel, and then we cut to Pepe, and it's just like, why am I even watching this? Do I care about him fighting Byakuya and Shuhei? I don't. I really don't. So, like, just get him out of here. Instead of spending so much time on Pepe, why not flesh out characters of the Sterner Ritters that we didn't get a whole lot of? Let's see BG9. Let's get what his actual shrift. Let's go what his actual shrift does. Let's see what Kang-Do can do when the both of them go into their holy forms. Let's see them do something worthwhile, even if they're still gonna die, even if it's still gonna be like, oh, Hoshwall kills them or whatever. Still have them do something. Have it make sense, I guess, for them to die too, because it's like they kind of get defeated, but like a lot of the Stern Ritters get defeated. So it's just kind of very odd. It's a whole thing. Spend more time on BG9 and Kang-Do. Get rid of Pepe. Another idea that I had as far as characters that could deserve getting more spotlight is Ishin. And I mentioned this already with like Ryukin, and I think Ryukin could have its own stuff, but like I have this amazing thought in my head that I want to see Ishin come in contact with Toshiro and Rangiku. Have them have a touching reunion. It made sense back in the fake Katakota Town arc that Ishin wouldn't come in contact with them. We didn't even know his past. We didn't know what was going on with that. Toshiro and Rangiku were on the ground, so it's like, okay, fine. They don't need to come in contact with him necessarily. It's okay. There's time at that point to explain it later on. Now is the time in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc to like show them he's a Soul Reaper again. He might not be a captain anymore or associate with the Soul Society or the 13 Court Guard Squad, but he's in the Soul Society. Have them fight. I've had this thought in my head where at whatever point you have Toshiro fighting up against somebody, he's still in his Bankai, and then maybe have Rangiku come back, because at one point Kubo said that she was going to be super important to the story, and overarching she kind of is, because eventually we learn in the Can't Fear Your Own World novel that like she had the nail of the Soul King in her, but like have them fighting together against somebody, whoever. And then you have, just as they're about to get hit by an attack, you have a Getsuga Tensho come right down on the enemy. And they're thinking, Getsuga Tensho, Ichigo's going off to fight Yuha. Who is that? And lo and behold, it is Ishin Kurosaki, who they know is Ishin Shiba. And it's a huge thing. Then he could come back, he can make some like offhand gross remark about Rangiku's body, and then say like, oh wow, Toshiro, you've grown a lot. That's cool, and like you've really grown up into a strong Soul Reaper or whatever. I'm proud of you. You've taken up the mantle of Squad 10 captain, and it's like it's kind of funny because like Toshiro would be in his like final form Bankai, where he's the tall, sexy Toshiro now. So it'd be kind of cool to see that combination, have them fight against each other. Maybe even we get to see, like, I'm not holding my breath that we'll ever see Ishin's Bankai, but have him use his Shikai. Have him do something with that fire. I want to see it. Now, if I keep thinking about everything that I would change about this arc, I would just keep going for on and on and on and on, and I don't want to do that, so I'll leave you with one final thing that I want an explanation on, and that is Ichigo's current final Bankai. I want to know specifically what are the details. Like, is it the, like, how does it even work? Like, is it the kind of thing? So I never really thought about it before, but now I'm starting to think about it more. Is the white part of his Bankai. So he's got the giant cleaver and it's like whatever, it's got the chain on it. The white part of his Bankai is actually a sheath. Now in the manga it's hard to tell because it's like, it looks like one flat piece that's just colored differently. but I get the feeling that it's like a sheath over his like, I guess, true Bankai, which would be the Claver, like the sword that looks like his old Shikai. So it's really a sheath and a sword and one capacity, and this sheath can be used as a blade, let's just say. So let's just get a little more information on that. Here's an idea, because Yuha stole all of his Quincy abilities. How does that affect Ichigo's Bankai? How does that affect him? Because his Bankai, his Zanpakuto, Zangetsu, is a like perfect fusion of his Soul Reaper hollow powers with his Quincy powers. It's supposed to be a firm confirmation that he's like kind of become one. If his Quincy powers get taken away, how does that freaking work? Does he still have the same amount of powers? Is he weaker? Like, explain that. So explain exactly how his sword physically works. Like, why does it look like that? And explain how his powers work as a whole. Just explain his Bankai. Give it some room to grow. Give it some room to breathe. Because clearly he can't just have it, and he, like, this is the first time he's used it since he obtained it in the Soul Palace when he was training. So, like, something needs to be explained here. Whew. So I'll leave it at that, because I just, like, dropped a bunch of stuff that I just want to see happen and change from Final Arc. I'm not going to keep going. I can't. I'm just going to keep going and keep ranting. This is not a rant. This is just something that I want to see. So let me know what your thoughts down below in the comments are. Do you want to see things change? Are you excited for the anime? Let me know down below in the comment section. And if you liked anything I had to say, or agree with me, or disagree with me, leave a like. Either way, leave a like, I guess. But leave a like if you liked anything I had to say. And if you want to see more from me, remember to subscribe and ring the bell. That way you'll get notifications whenever I upload, and you will never miss a thing. I will see you guys in another video. So long.